Hey y'all, it's Auntie Ashley at the Clinical Cookout, and today is Friendly Neighborhood Therapist Friday. So I am here to wrap up our week of Juneteenth because we celebrated it all week. Right now, I'm going to get into my Friendly Neighborhood Therapist spiel for Juneteenth, which is going to be all about the history and legacy of Juneteenth because a lot of people don't know it. They do not know it. And I gave a little fragment of it on our episode that aired on Monday. If you did not watch the episode, go on and take yourself over to YouTube because what are you doing with your life? Go on to YouTube and watch the episode, y'all. It was really good. And again, you want positivity, you got to support it. Anyway, I'm going to get a little bit deeper into the history and legacy of Juneteenth. Let's go. All right. So all information that I'm giving y'all right now, and I'm going to read some excerpts because I just want it to be accurate. So I'm going to be reading some things from the Smithsonian Institution, National Museum of African American History and Culture, because y'all know that's all about and for us. So their history on it is top notch. All right. So boom, the Civil War is over, right? Y'all already know North beats the South. Now in the South, some people still seem to think, I ain't gonna get into that, but North wins. And on Freedom's Eve, which was the eve of January 1st, 1863, the first watch night services took place. And on that night, enslaved and free African Americans gathered in churches and private homes all across the country awaiting news that the Emancipation Proclamation had taken effect. And then at the stroke of midnight, prayers were answered as all enslaved people in Confederate states were declared legally free. At this point, the Union soldiers, many of whom were black, marched onto plantations and across cities in the South, reading small copies of the Emancipation Proclamation, spreading the news of freedom in those Confederate states. And it is only through the 13th Amendment that emancipation ended slavery. Now, there are things about the 13th Amendment we could talk about, but we're just going to focus on the fact that it ended slavery. Now, y'all already know that the slave owners and slave masters in the South, in those Confederate states, were not happy about the enslaved people being free. So, of course, they weren't going to just listen to that because the South always had their own agenda. And their whole livelihood at that point was turned upside down. So they didn't want to let the slaves go free. I hate the term slaves, y'all. I do. I hate it. But anyway, they didn't want to let them go free. So not everyone in Confederate territory was immediately free. Even though that Emancipation Proclamation was made effective in 1863, it could not be implemented in places still under Confederate control. As a result, in the westernmost Confederate state of Texas, it's always Texas, enslaved people would not be free until much later. Fast forward 2 years and 5 whole months later, on June 19th, 1865, freedom finally came to the enslaved in Texas. Over 2,000 Union troops arrived in Galveston Bay, Texas, and Major General Gordon Granger informed the last of the country's enslaved that they were free in the wake of the Union's victory in the Civil War. Y'all, more than 250,000 enslaved black people in the state of Texas just found out on that day that they were free by executive order. 2 years and 5 months after the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect. So that day became affectionately known as Juneteenth, June 19th. Now, quick sidebar here. This is why a lot of African Americans to this day do not really care about July 4th. July 4th, 1776 was the day the country of America gained its freedom from British rule. We were no longer under British rule. Well, not we, they were no longer under British rule. However, on July 4th, 1776, we were still 3/5 human. We were still enslaved. We were still cooking their meals and being beaten and all those things, taking care of their homes, all that. So that day is not important to us because why should it be? My great, 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 great ancestors were not free on that day. So that is one Independence Day. That is the Independence Day for the country from British rule. Not for all the people in the country, but for the country. Then we can consider January 2nd, 1863 as a second Independence Day because that is when the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect and most of the enslaved were given their freedom. And then Juneteenth is the third Independence Day when those over 250,000 slaves in Galveston, Texas found out that they too were free. So you see, those two Independence Days are our Independence Days because we were not free on July 4th, 1776. We were not considered American on July 4th, 1776. We were considered property like an animal on July 4th, 1776. So you see how that's a problem? You see how that day wouldn't hold as much weight for us? I mean, granted, we're going to take the day off. You give us a day off, we're going to take it. And we're going to barbecue because we're going to barbecue on any day. But we're not celebrating that. We're just celebrating being together as families and friends. We could care less about the Day of Independence on a day that our ancestors were not free. Makes sense? So anyway, now, 2 years ago, in 2021, President Joe Biden announced that Juneteenth would now be a federal holiday. So now it's treated just like all the other federal holidays. We get the day off, the banks are closed, everybody cooking, and that's great. That's great, but there's still work to be done. Y'all know me. I don't take crumbs. So yes, it's wonderful. Enjoy it. We should enjoy it. But there's more work to be done. Juneteenth is a wonderful, amazing day that our people have celebrated for generations, really, especially those in Texas or with ties to Texas. History and the legacy are amazing, but also, and just some fun facts, some fun historical facts. Juneteenth started as a yearly local celebration in Texas, but it is now recognized across the country. As I said, it has now become a federal holiday, and commemorations include gatherings of family and friends, the raising of the Emancipation Day flag, and the consumption of delicious Juneteenth foods. So I want to tell y'all a couple of the food history traditions of Juneteenth. Red foods are the most prominent feature on a Juneteenth menu. Red sodas, punches, hibiscus tea, red velvet cake, red beans and rice, hot sauce, and fruits such as strawberries and watermelon, all red things. And according to the culinary historian and writer Michael Twitty, the historical importance of red food traces back to the times of enslavement. Because many of the more common foods of the day were white, green, or brown, there was an excitement that came with the rarity of eating red-colored treats. So in the 19th century, this made certain vibrant delicacies worth celebrating. And in the later half of the 1800s, following the Civil War, Black Americans would even occasionally use an expensive South American dye called cochineal, which was used to color foods red. But what made the color even more significant was Texas's status as one of the last states to participate in the American slave trade. So towards the end of the years of the slave trade, many of the cultures that would have come through to Texas would have been from Yoruba and Congo, in which the color red is highly associated with those cultures. And of course, smoked sauce-covered barbecue meats are also considered a red food and also considered the most important feature on a Juneteenth table. Some Texas barbecue? Come on, y'all. And the typical side items for a Juneteenth meal are considered or called prosperity meal foods and sides, such as corn, cornbread, collard greens, cabbage, black-eyed peas, pork, potatoes, yams, and sweet potatoes. Black-eyed peas and pork represent wealth. Collard greens are said to bring good fortune, and corn symbolizes gold. And though not a prosperity meal, potato salad is generally seen as a non-negotiable at any decent barbecue. Also, collard greens and sweet potatoes particularly both offer historical context, as the foods were easy crops for the enslaved to harvest, store over the winter, and prepare themselves at meal times. So that's all I got for y'all. Wanted to wrap up Juneteenth with some history and then some food. So y'all, I hope y'all had a wonderful Juneteenth, a wonderful week. And just remember, there's no one way to celebrate it, but it should be celebrated. So however you do it, make sure you do it. But I hope y'all have a beautiful, wonderful rest of y'all day. And I will holler at y'all later.
Sounds right.